It is the 20th of December, 1989. Kurt Muse, an American spy, needs to be rescued from the Carcel Modelo Prison in Panama. There is only one unit capable of breaking this precious American asset free out of his cell: the operatives of Delta Force. What otherwise would have meant the death of Kurt Muse has been dubbed as Operation Acid Gambit, part of Operation Just Cause, and it quickly became a mission the operators would never forget. Welcome to the Spy Network. As the U.S. invasion of Panama was launched, in the massive wave of Air Force specialists, soldiers of the U.S. Army, and other special forces, was a small unit of highly skilled operatives with a secret mission. For the Delta Force operators, the mission was clear: get an American citizen, codenamed Precious Cargo, out of a prison in Panama. A picture and a name was all they needed. Kurt Muse, 2,000 miles away, was being held in numerous locations to confuse the U.S. government about his whereabouts. He was being deprived of sleep, interrogated continuously, and forced to watch other prisoners getting tortured. As the Panamanian government was eager to prove that Muse was a citizen of Panama and not of the U.S., they initially refused to permit any U.S. officials to contact him. The U.S. government reacted quickly and blocked all visas from Panama to the U.S. Soon after, Noriega, the dictator of Panama at the time, had no other choice but to conform to the sanctions and was also bound to the conditions of the Panama Canal Treaty, which gave the U.S. officials the green to contact Muse. At this time, Muse was moved to the notorious Carcel Modelo, the model prison that was built in 1925 and could house around 250 inmates. Around 1987, however, they housed approximately around 1,000 inmates, creating barbaric living conditions. He was put in an 8x12 prison cell, which is no larger than a spacious toilet. He had only a small area next to it, which was the bathroom, and the only furniture he had was his 2-inch thick foam rubber mattress, which divided him and the cold concrete floor. During this time, he was allowed out of his prison cell for no more than 4 times. In his cell was a small square window, through which numerous acts of torture could be heard and seen. One time, a Panamanian man was wrapped in an American flag, hung by his cuffed hands from a basketball hoop, and severely beaten with clubs and rubber hoses. The screams of agony could be heard echoing throughout the Carcel Modelo, day and night. After 8 months passed, the barbaric conditions began to take a physical and mental toll on Muse, as he had lost over 50 pounds of body weight. President George Bush, well aware of Muse's situation, promised that this American would be rescued. After this decision was reached, military leaders were allowed to decide how it would be carried out. The mission was promptly assigned to the U.S. Army's elite counter-terrorism Delta Force, formerly known as Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, in collaboration with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Group and assisted by AC-130 gunship from the 1st Special Operations Wing. You know that when this formation is made, you are ready to take on everything that will cross your path. The mission had no other outcome than to succeed. Realizing that a guard had been given explicit orders to assassinate Muse at the first signs of U.S. military intervention towards Panama, the mission needed a new level of covertness. However, following a failed coup attempt on October 3rd, Carcel Modelo was converted from a civilian to a military installation. Military forces replaced civilian guards almost immediately, and stronger defense posts were established. It was also at this time that Noriega began to refer to Muse as a hostage rather than a prisoner. In addition, an armed guard was stationed outside Muse's cell, with standing orders to take him out if the U.S. took any action against Panama. Delta Force began to specifically train for this mission, as a mock-up of the prison was made specifically to conduct live-fire drills. This took place at the Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. The mock-up was made precisely with the information of military officers who were allowed to see Muse in his cell. This way, Delta Force could practice this mission over and over again, in complete secrecy. Tensions between the two countries rose when the prison was being heavily guarded by military personnel, and Muse was no longer a prisoner, but a hostage. It was time to retrieve Muse from Panama. The mission. Muse was visited by an unknown colonel, while everyone present in the meeting room could hear choppers flying over close by. Muse was told something the rest of the people in the room did not know. Well-prepared operatives were coming for Muse, and they were not going to let anyone stand between them and getting Muse out of his cell on the second floor of the facility. At 0:45 hours, 2 AH-6 helicopters fired the first shots of Operation Acid Gambit. The shots came from the M143 miniguns, penetrating any sniper threats that they came across. The minigun bullets were followed up by several salvos of 2.75-inch unguided rockets from the dual outboard rocket pods into the nearby Comandancia, which is the name for a military-controlled part of the city or area. The military personnel that guarded the prison were instructed to defend it at all costs. Meanwhile, Delta Force called in the big guns, which meant that the AC-130s were cleared to fire away. This, however, was a costly decision. An unknowing AH-6 helicopter pilot was shot down and crash-landed inside the compound. The pilot luckily survived, and what he did know was that the AC-130 was not yet finished. Taking fire at the compound, he swiftly moved away from what he assumed were the targets and made it to safety. The rescue. Muse, now fully aware of the situation, grabbed his clothes and started running. He made his way to the floor of his bathroom and peered around the corner to see anyone who might be coming to his cell. As quickly as it had started, however, it was over. Everything within the prison went silent. Not much later, the 4 helicopters, each with 4 Delta Force operatives in them, touched on the top of the roof of the prison and began their exfiltration mission. The prison guards were tasked with defending the facility and made for a heavy resistance. One of the buildings in the Comandancia was spraying bullets at the positions of the Delta Force operators. Little did they know, the team already instructed the AC-130 to silence the target and wreck the whole building. The mission could continue. Inside of his cell, Muse listened to the sounds of battle as explosions and small arms barked out. Smoke began to fill the air, and then he noticed something. Thin, white beams from the small flashlights mounted beneath the assault team's weapons beamed through the darkness, reflected by the smoke. An American voice barked through the haze, instructing Muse to take cover. While Muse ducked, the door was blasted open, and in came a heavily armed operative, directing Muse to stand up and take on some Kevlar, helmet, and vest. They ushered to the top of the building, to the roof where the helicopters could safely get Muse out of his imprisonment and out of the country. It was only when he boarded the helicopter that he saw more operatives emerging and exfiltrating. This gave him a glimpse of the operation that he was a valuable asset in. In a feeling of euphoria, the helicopter was taken down by enemy gunfire, crash-landing the helicopter in the streets of Panama. What followed was a 15-minute gunfight, all while Muse was safely positioned out of range from the enemy. Muse asked for a pistol, which he was able to handle due to his time in the army. While all returning fire, the AC-130 was signaled by an infrared laser beam where to fire 40mm rounds to. Enemies were neutralized seconds after. A nearby U.S. Army patrol came in to extract the team. This specific team rescued Muse from an imminent death. In the process, they became the first ever team rescuing an American hostage from enemy captivity. This was the heroic story of Delta Force operators, risking their lives to rescue others. If you like what we are doing here, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more interesting videos. Thank you for watching.